Since there seems to be some confusion about the title Son of God and Son of Man, I want to bring some clarity here. I heard a guy, he posted a video of a man that's so-called an apostle to say that the Son of God is not the Son of Man. So what I want to do is I want to touch on that real quick to show who is the Son of God, who is the Son of Man. So let's get started. All right. So who is the Son of God? We're going to answer that question by going to John chapter 20, verse 31. John chapter 20, verse 31. And this is what the scriptures say. I'm going to start at 30. It says, and many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life through his name. So we see that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. So we know that Jesus, who is the Christ, is the Son of God. So now let's see who is Jesus then. Since if people's confused about that, let's go to the scriptures. Who is Jesus? That is the Christ. So who is Jesus that says Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God? Who is Jesus? We're going to go to Matthew chapter 1. We're going to find out who is Jesus. All right. We're going to go to verse 21 to be exact. It says this. It's talking about Mary. And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus. For he shall save his people from their sins. So we got Jesus is going to be the son that Mary birthed. Now, you may be asking, well, who is the Christ? Because it said Jesus is Christ, the Son of God. So we got who Jesus is. That's the son of Mary. Now, who is Christ? This same chapter, Matthew chapter 1, verse 18. Hold on, is that what I want to go to? Yeah, it says 18, but let me see here. I'm sorry, verse 16. Here we go. It says, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. So we got this Jesus who was going to be born of Mary. His name is called Jesus. And the scriptures say here, 16, and this who was born Jesus, who is called Christ. So Jesus is the Christ, who is the Son of God, as said in John chapter 20, verse 31. So, and there's many witness accounts of this, but I don't even have to go into details because what I gave you is just enough to show you. But I can go into scripture to show you that how the disciples recognized Jesus as the Son of God. We got evil spirits, unclean spirits, devils recognize Jesus as the Son of God, but there's no need for me to go into that. But if you want to know those scriptures, hit me in the comment section. I'll show you that. Now, so we got who is Jesus, who is Christ, who is the Son of God. So we know that Jesus, who is called Christ, is the Son of God. Now, who is the Son of Man? Because this apostle said that the Son of Man wasn't the Son of God. So let's go to Matthew chapter 8. Let's see who is the Son of Man. Matthew chapter 8. I'm going to start at verse 18. So now remember, this Jesus who was born of Mary. Let's see what it says here. Now when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, this same Jesus, he gave commandment to depart to the other side. And a certain scribe came and said unto him, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. And Jesus said unto him, the foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man had not where to lay his head. So Jesus, right here in the scripture, he calls himself the Son of Man. All right. So we got Jesus, who is called Christ, who is the Son of God. Right here in Matthew 8, verse 20, he calls himself Son of Man. I'm going to go to the next chapter, Matthew chapter 9. I'm going to start at verse 4. We got Jesus again talking. It says, and Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, wherefore think ye evil in your hearts? For whether it is easy to say, thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, arise and walk, but that ye may know that the Son of Man had power on earth to forgive sins. All right, so now we got Jesus again, calling himself the Son of Man, saying he got power on earth to forgive sins. We know ain't no man on this earth had the power to forgive sins. But Jesus, who is called Christ, who is the Son of God, he had power to forgive sins. And in here, in Matthew 9, verse 6, he called himself again the Son of Man. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 11, verse 19. Matthew 11, 19. Let's see what Jesus say again. Well, I'm going to start at 18. It says this. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he had the devil. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, behold, a man gluttonous and a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners, but wisdom is justified of her children. So we know that the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, he is the one who came eating and drinking, who they said, who they call gluttonous and a winebibber. So Jesus here again calls himself the Son of Man. Do I need to go to another scripture to show you that Jesus called himself the Son of Man again? But I guess I would do so. Let's go to Matthew chapter 12, verse 40. For people who just don't get the scripture. Here we go. Who was in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights? Wasn't it Jesus? All right. So here we go. Verse 40. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Who died? Who was crucified and in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights, as saith the scripture? Wasn't it not Jesus? And right here, he calls himself again the Son of Man. I done proved it enough. I can go more scriptures where he called himself. As a matter of fact, let's go to Matthew 24, because I want to know who's coming back. I do want to go there. Who's coming back? You know this rapture that people talks about? Well, who's coming back? Verse 20, Matthew 24. Let's go right here. Start at verse 3. It says this. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So we got the disciples asking Jesus what's going to be the sign of his coming. Now, let's see what Jesus say. Let's go to the same chapter 24, but let's go over to verse 27. Let's see what Jesus say. He says here, for as the lightning come out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. We know that Jesus is the one coming back, but yet he says the Son of Man is coming. Go over to verse 30. He says this. Well, let me continue from 27. Now 28. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eaters be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and with great glory, and he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. So we got the Son of Man who is coming back. Paul tells us in 1 Thessalonians that he shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel. And he talks about how the angels are going to go out and gather the elect, which is said right here by Jesus in Matthew 24. So we got Jesus, who is called Christ, who is also the Son of God, who calls himself the Son of Man. So for anybody out there who try to say that the Son of God is not the Son of Man, you don't know what you're talking. Pay attention to the scripture. Read and study the scripture, and you will see that the Son of Man is the Son of God. No difference.